You have her eyes, and she's been gone for 40 years. She doesn't belong in this will. She's just a black waitress. Those words cut through the air like glass. They didn't just insult her. They tried to erase her. And in that moment, time itself seemed to hesitate. Forks froze mid-air, voices dropped, and even the jukebox in the corner went silent. Zariah Coleman didn't flinch. 23, strikingly beautiful, proudly black. She stood tall in her pressed uniform, the smell of coffee and iron in the air, a fresh pot balanced steady in her hands. Her eyes, warm brown, steady, unyielding, locked on the man who had just tried to define her. But Zariah knew better. She knew who she was, and she knew what she wasn't. She wasn't just anything. For 2 years she showed up at Magnolia Diner before the sun even thought of rising. While the city slept, she smiled, she served, and she listened. Her hands moved in rhythm. Pour, smile, serve, repeat. A quiet symphony of muscle memory and grace. Every chipped cup she carried held more than coffee. It carried care. It carried consistency. It carried a kind of dignity that didn't need to announce itself. And every morning, at exactly 7:12 a.m., she poured a cup of black coffee. No sugar, no cream, no questions, for the same man. He never said much. He didn't have to. She saw the story in his silence, the weight in his eyes, the loneliness that clung to his shoulders like a second coat. She never knew his name. She never asked. And yet, somehow, he mattered. She didn't know that the man who sat quietly in booth 7, the man who left crisp bills and small nods of gratitude, was Arthur Whitmore, billionaire and founder of Whitmore Holdings, a man who had built an empire and then walked away from it. The world knew his fortune, but Zariah knew his humanity. That's what made all the difference. Because one day, the son he left behind, Marcus Whitmore, sharp suit, sharper tongue, would come looking for what he thought was stolen. He came not to mourn, but to measure, not to remember, but to reclaim. He came to erase her, and that's when the world would finally see the truth about who Zariah really was. But before that day, before the letters, the will, the headlines, there was just her life. Simple, quiet, honest. Zariah lived on the south side of Atlanta, in a small one-bedroom apartment with cracked paint and a view of the streetlights that never went out. The rent rose faster than her paychecks, and the water ran colder with every winter. Still, she called it home. Her grandmother, Miss Thelma, raised her there, a woman with silver hair, iron spirit, and words that still lived in Zariah's head like scripture. Baby, this world will try to break you twice before breakfast, so you better learn to walk like you own the sidewalk. So she did. Every day she walked like the ground beneath her feet belonged to her name. Pressed uniform, clean shoes, hair tied back neat beneath a scarf. Dignity wasn't optional. It was survival. At Magnolia Diner, Zariah wasn't just a waitress. She was rhythm. She was routine. Her presence carried calm into chaos. Her smile, the soft kind that didn't ask for attention but earned it anyway, could make even a bad morning taste better. Most people didn't see her that way. To the businessmen in white shirts, she was just a refill. To the soccer moms, just the girl with the nose ring. To the late-night crowd, invisible. Except to him, the old man in booth 7. He came in every morning like the sunrise in human form, reliable, quiet, deliberate. Polished shoes, worn coat, eyes that saw more than they admitted. He sat in that same booth, watching the world outside the diner window move on without him. And every morning, Zariah brought him the same thing. Black coffee, hot and strong, served with the same greeting. "Morning, sir. Here's your usual." That was all.
No small talk, no pity, no pretending. Just respect. And that small act, that quiet, unseen ritual, would ripple far beyond that little corner diner. Because kindness, when it's real, never disappears. It finds its way into wills, into stories, into history. But before kindness changed her life, cruelty tried to break it. It started small, as it often does. A snap of fingers for service. A man calling her sweetheart with a tone that felt anything but sweet. A couple refusing to sit in her section. Each slight, small, invisible to those who didn't have to live it, but heavy enough to wear down anyone without armor. Then came the Thursday that would test that armor. A man in khakis and a golf cap leaned back in his chair and said, "You people are always so slow. What's the point of hiring if they can't keep up?" The words dropped like lead. Zariah froze. Her fingers went cold, but her face stayed steady. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. Her silence was louder than any shout. In the back, she leaned against the sink, heart pounding. Her manager told her to stay professional, like swallowing humiliation was part of the job description. That night she went home and fell onto her grandmother's old couch, still smelling of lavender and cinnamon. Miss Thelma brushed her hair and said softly, "Don't let them take your shine, baby. The ones who fear your light will always try to dim it." And she smiled through tired tears because she knew she couldn't quit. The next morning she returned to the diner, pressed, polished, calm. And at 7:12 a.m., there he was again, booth 7, black coffee, silent presence. But that morning something was different. When she brought his cup, he looked up, really looked, and with a small, almost invisible nod, he acknowledged her. That one look was enough. It said, "I see you." And that was all the strength she needed to keep showing up. But what neither of them knew was that soon that same strength would be tested again, only this time in a way that would shake the walls of Magnolia Diner and rewrite both of their names in ink the world couldn't ignore. The first time Zariah saw him, it was barely past 6. Fog draped over the city like an old secret, and the streets glistened with leftover rain. Inside Magnolia Diner, the scent of bacon had just begun to rise. Zariah wiped down the counter, humming softly, her reflection faint in the window. That's when he walked in, or maybe drifted in. Tall, older, quiet. A trench coat that had seen too many winters, shoes polished but worn. He didn't say a word, didn't look around for approval. He just took off his hat, nodded to the air, and sat down in booth 7, her section. She poured fresh coffee into a clean mug, her steps light and steady. When she placed it in front of him, she said gently, "Morning, sir. Black, I'm guessing?" He nodded once. No smile, no words. That was it. 27 minutes later, he left 2 crisp dollar bills on the table and disappeared into the morning fog. The next day, he came again. Same time, same booth, same silence. And then again, and again. Routine became ritual. Every morning, Zariah poured coffee for a man who never ordered food, never shared his name, and never missed a day. And even though they didn't speak, something wordless grew between them. A quiet understanding only the patient can build. The other waitresses noticed. "Creepy old guy's back," one said. "Maybe he's homeless," said another. Someone joked, "Zariah's got herself a sugar grandpa." She didn't respond, because she saw what they didn't. This man wasn't lost. He was waiting. And somehow, she knew he was waiting for more than breakfast. Some mornings, she'd leave a biscuit beside his cup, or a folded napkin with a small doodle. He never ate the food, but he always came back. Eventually, he started leaving tips, exact, measured, never random. $2, then $3, then $5, like the rhythm of a heartbeat. And every once in a while, she'd catch him glancing up from his coffee, just for a moment. Eyes soft, tired, but thankful. He never said it out loud, but Zariah didn't need him to. Some gratitude doesn't need words. To her, he wasn't a billionaire hiding from the world. He was just a soul looking for warmth, and she gave it freely. For her, the diner wasn't just work. It was her stage, her church, her battlefield. She fought 2 wars there every day, one for her paycheck, the other for her pride. Most of the customers saw plates, not people. But Zariah saw stories. Every tip, every smirk, every impatient sigh, all small chapters of something bigger. She was the quiet observer in a place that demanded noise. And yet, for all the injustice, she never lost her smile. Because somewhere deep down, she believed what her grandma always said, "Grace ain't weakness, baby. It's armor the world can't see." Then one day, the rhythm broke. It was a Tuesday morning. The air felt heavier than usual, like something missing. Zariah clocked in early, tied her apron, checked her reflection, and smoothed the wrinkles from her uniform. Booth 7 was spotless, a clean mug waiting. But when 7:12 came, the door didn't open. She gave it a minute, then 2, then 10. Still no sign of him. She told herself maybe he was late, maybe traffic, maybe the weather. But deep down, she already knew. The next morning, he still didn't come, and the one after that. By the 5th day, Booth 7 felt like a ghost. She left a note. Neat handwriting, small, hopeful words. "Hope you're okay. Miss you. Z." She tucked it under his napkin and poured a cup of coffee that no one would drink. The cup stayed full until it went cold. The next day, she did it again. Weeks passed. The city changed seasons. Leaves turned, days shortened, and still Booth 7 sat empty. And every time she passed it, she felt that same quiet ache, like a favorite song cut off before the last verse. But what Zariah didn't know was that somewhere far from that diner, behind closed doors and quiet wealth, a man was writing letters, writing instructions, writing her name into a story that would one day stop the whole world mid-sentence. Because Arthur Whitmore hadn't just disappeared, he had left behind something far heavier than money. He had left behind truth. And truth, when it's real, doesn't stay buried for long. The sky was the color of tarnished silver that morning, the kind that promises rain but holds it hostage just long enough to make you uneasy. Magnolia Diner hummed with its usual rhythm, plates clattering, jazz humming from the jukebox, the smell of syrup and grease mixing with morning chatter. Zariah had been on her feet for hours already, moving with practiced grace. She didn't expect the day to be different until it was. At exactly 8:30 a.m., the door opened, and a black Escalade rolled up outside. It wasn't a regular's car. Too polished, too precise, too out of place. 3 men walked in, suits sharp enough to slice the air. The one in front, tall and angular, wore power like cologne. Marcus Whitmore. He didn't introduce himself right away. He didn't need to. The kind of man who expects the world to move when he walks in doesn't have to. His gaze landed on her, deliberate, dissecting, and cold. "Are you Zariah Coleman?" His tone made her name sound like an accusation. She blinked, steadying her breath. "Yes. Can I help you?" I'm Marcus Whitmore. I'm here about my father.
Her heart stopped for a beat. Father. The word hung heavy in the air, as if it carried more than DNA, as if it carried truth. Two lawyers slid into a booth behind him, one black, one white, both quiet. The older one spoke first, his voice careful, respectful. Miss Coleman, my name is Thomas Granger. I represented your friend, Marshall Whitmore. The diner went silent. Even the jukebox seemed to pause. Forks hovered mid-air. Customers leaned closer without meaning to. Zariah's throat tightened. Marshall? She whispered. Granger nodded. He passed last week. The world didn't shatter. It just dimmed. That quiet man. The man who never missed a morning. Gone. Granger placed an envelope on the table. It was sealed, thick, heavy with the weight of something final. This letter was written by Mr. Whitmore before his passing, he said. You might want to sit down. Zariah sat. The paper crinkled softly as he opened the letter and began to read. You reminded me what it means to be seen. Not for my wealth, not for my name, just seen. You never asked for anything, and maybe that's why I want to give you something. Consider this not charity, but thanks, from one soul to another. Marcus scoffed under his breath. You've got to be kidding me. Granger continued. To Miss Zariah Coleman, I leave a gift of $250,000 to be used however she wishes. May it serve her as her kindness served me. Gasps whispered through the diner. Zariah's hands trembled. She didn't understand, not yet, but Marcus did, and fury flickered behind his composed exterior. He leaned forward, venom in his voice. She manipulated him. Don't fall for this. My father wasn't well. He probably thought she was someone else. Zariah met his stare, calm, unmoved. I didn't even know his name, she said softly. I just brought him coffee. Silence again. Then Granger spoke. There's more. Marcus frowned. More? Granger reached into his briefcase and produced a second document, this one embossed with gold seal. He pressed play on a tablet. The diner's noise faded to nothing. On the screen, Marshall Whitmore appeared, older, frailer, but clear-eyed. If you're watching this, he began, voice trembling but sure, then I'm gone. And if Marcus is sitting there, angry, then at least I know nothing's changed. A nervous laugh rippled through the diner. Marcus's jaw tightened. Marshall went on. Zariah is not charity. She's not a con. She's a reminder that decency still exists in small corners of this world. She gave me something no one else did, time. And in that time, I saw what real wealth looks like. Zariah's eyes burned, but she didn't cry. She couldn't. It felt like he was still right there, booth 7, coffee steaming between them, silence saying everything words couldn't. The video ended. Marcus rose to his feet, furious. This is a joke. A waitress gets $250,000 because she poured him coffee? Granger looked up, calm but sharp. No, Mr. Whitmore. She gets far more than that. He opened a second envelope. Inside, legal pages, signed, sealed, witnessed. Your father's total estate was valued at $84 million. To you, Marcus Whitmore, he leaves 1%. To Ms. Zariah Coleman. He paused.
The air thickened. He leaves the other 99%. The diner gasped. A coffee cup slipped from someone's hand, shattering. Zariah froze. She hadn't moved, hadn't blinked. Marcus stood still, pale, jaw locked. "That's not possible," he whispered. But it was. And the truth had just taken its seat at the table. The story didn't end with the will. It never does. News spreads fast when money and color mix. By nightfall, every local station had her name. Waitress inherits $84 million from mystery billionaire. By morning, strangers had opinions, reporters had cameras, and the internet had claws. At first, Zariah tried to stay quiet. She went to work, poured coffee, smiled through whispers that weren't really whispers at all. She must have slept with him. She played him. She's just lucky. Each word landed like ash on her skin, soft but suffocating. Then came the hate mail. Emails that said, "Go back," comments that spat, "Gold digger," messages so vile she stopped checking her phone at night. Someone even threw a brick through Magnolia Diner's window. No note, just glass glittering on tile like broken applause. The police took a report and left. The manager told her to take time off, but Zariah refused. She swept the floor herself, piece by piece, until the window was just a frame again. Because that's what black women like her were taught to do, clean up the mess, even when they didn't make it. The next morning she came back earlier than usual. Sunrise spilling gold across the counter, she set 2 mugs on booth 7, one for him, one for the girl who refused to disappear. Then she whispered, "Thank you," and got to work. Granger called that afternoon. "Marcus isn't letting go," he warned. "He's pulling strings, trying to freeze the assets, smear your name." Zariah looked out the window at the cracked asphalt, at kids walking home from school with backpacks heavier than their dreams. "Let him try," she said. "I'm not fighting for money. I'm fighting for meaning." And she did. The first check she wrote wasn't for herself. It was for the diner, to rebuild the window, fix the roof, repaint the sign. Then she created the Worth Project, a foundation for youth who reminded her of herself, unseen, underestimated, unbreakable. Scholarships, apprenticeships, microgrants for small businesses. Her mission statement was only 8 words long. Because kindness should compound like interest, not fade. Within months, local news turned their tone. Headlines shifted from scandal to service. The same cameras that once chased her for a soundbite now filmed ribbon cuttings and mentorship drives. Still, Marcus kept coming. He launched lawsuits, interviews, even hired PR teams to reclaim his father's legacy. But legacy can't be reclaimed when it's already recognized. When the court hearing finally came, Zariah didn't hire a celebrity lawyer. She brought the same quiet confidence that had once poured a cup of coffee. The judge read Marshall Whitmore's video testimony, the same words that had silenced the diner. The decision was swift. Will upheld. Case closed. Marcus left the courtroom alone, his fortune reduced to the reflection in a tinted car window. Zariah walked out into sunlight, not richer, just freer. Months passed. Magnolia Diner buzzed again, busier than ever. Tourists stopped by just to sit in booth 7, to breathe in the story that changed everything. But Zariah never turned it into spectacle. No plaques, no press tours, just a small frame on the wall, a picture of Marshall Whitmore in his trench coat, smiling faintly beside the words, "Seen and remembered." She still worked the morning shift, still poured coffee to truckers, nurses, students, dreamers. But now she poured it from a place of power, not over others, but over her own story. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows, a woman in scrubs stopped by booth 7. She looked exhausted. Zariah poured her a refill and said, "It's on the house." She smiled weakly. "Why?" Zariah answered, "Because someone once did the same for me." Simple, full circle, sacred. By the first anniversary of Marshall's